Picture this. Beautiful. Sun-drenched beaches and ancient ruins. But beneath this charming facade lies a fiscal crisis threatening to upend the entire Eurozone. Italy, celebrated for its rich culture, is now at the heart of a debt storm. You might think, how bad can it be? Well, imagine a mountain, a really big one, made entirely of debt. That's Italy, and that mountain has reached a staggering 150% of the country's GDP. To put it simply, for every $100 Italy makes, it owes $150. Doesn't sound sustainable, does it? Now, everyone's eyes are peeled. Because frankly, if Italy defaults, the euro could collapse. We were told that the euro was unstoppable. But is it? How many times have we heard gargantuan bailout plans, promised reforms, but then there's Luca, a baker in Naples, who just can't make ends meet. He's one tiny piece in this jigsaw puzzle, living this reality. And we have to ask, how did it get this bad? Is it politicians? The banks? The system? Or all of the above? In the following parts, we'll dive deeper into this financial whirlwind. Stay tuned. All right, let's talk about Italy, a place with rich culture and history, but also a huge mountain of debt. And it's not just any debt, we're talking over 2.7 trillion euros. Just let that number sink in. But here's what's really interesting. Italy's GDP just can't keep up. Their debt ratio is over 150%. I mean, shouldn't we be worried about this? Think about Giuseppe. He's running a little trattoria in Siena trying to make ends meet. How's he supposed to thrive economically when the government's in such massive debt? But don't just take my word for it. Look at the European Central Bank. They're keeping a close watch, and that's not a good sign. They're nervous that if Italy can't pay up, the whole Eurozone could suffer. Sounds dramatic? Well, it's not. Because think about it. How does Italy's debt stack up against Greece? Well, Italy is much bigger economically, so it's a huge problem for the euro. And if they can't handle this debt situation, we could see a serious crisis. So while folks enjoy their espresso in the morning, a real economic storm is brewing in the background. All right, let's dig deep into Italy's economic maze because believe me, it's a rabbit hole. You would think that a country renowned for its incredible history and cultural riches would have its financial act together, right? Well, it's not that simple. Imagine, just for a second, carrying a debt so massive it feels like an anchor dragging you down. That's Italy's situation. We're talking about over 2.5 trillion euros. Yeah, you heard me right, trillions with a T. And here's the kicker. Italy's debt is now about 150% of its GDP. Every household in Italy, like the Mancinis in a small town, is carrying a burden of around 100,000 euros. It's like having a giant mortgage without the house. Now, why does this matter? This isn't just Italy's issue. The Eurozone's stability depends on each member's fiscal health. Weak links, like Italy, risk pulling everyone down. Consider this. If Italy spirals, the shockwaves won't just stop at its borders, but ripple through the entire European Union. So we must ask ourselves, isn't it about time we address this ticking bomb? Now, let's unravel one of the most intriguing conundrums facing the European Union, Italy's staggering debt. You might think, so what if Italy carries a bit of debt? But hold on, when we say bit, we're talking about a colossal 2.67 trillion euro debt. And yes, trillion with a T. Let's put this into perspective. Italy ranks as the second most indebted country in the Eurozone, after Greece, which had its own crash course in economic chaos. So we ask, could Italy's debt be the endgame for the euro? Enter Giovanni, a small shop owner in Rome. His business mirrors the country's economy. Overrun with costs, struggling with taxes, and barely afloat, just like Italy itself. Examine Italy's GDP, which is absolutely dwarfed by its debt ratio. The debt-to-GDP ratio stands at an ominous over 150%. This isn't just an economic nuisance, it's a potential financial earthquake. So what happens when you stack such a mammoth debt against a currency brittle like the euro? Perhaps it's time to dig deeper and question the very foundation of the euro's endurance. All right, let's dive deeper into Italy's debt crisis, which some say could be the nail in the euro's coffin. Italy isn't just carrying any old debt. We're talking about debt that could rival some of the largest countries in the world. So you gotta wonder, what does that mean for the euro? Italy's debt sits at over 150% of its GDP. Think about that. They're producing way less than what they owe. Now, consider Michelangelo, an average Italian guy who works a 9 to 5. He pays taxes, hoping for a secure future, yet constantly fears what might crumble next. And can you blame him? The government's, let's say, notorious handling costs is leading Italy into a financial fiery pit. And it doesn't just stop at national debt. There's also the question of trust in the Eurozone. How long before partners start pulling away? We've seen fractures before. Remember Greece? It shook the euro, all right. Italy's far larger, and a bigger shake could potentially ripple across borders. And let's not forget, everyone's watching. Every investor, every ally, even non-Europeans, they've got their eyes on it. It's like waiting for the dominoes to fall. Let's dive deep into the heart of what has been a persistent problem for Italy, the enormous mountain of national debt. You may wonder, why does this matter? And more importantly, who does it affect? Italy holds a formidable place in the Eurozone, so any ripple here can cause a tidal wave elsewhere in Europe. Now, you might think that this is just a bureaucratic shuffle, but consider this. If Italy were to default, the euro's credibility would take a massive hit. Now, meet Francesco, a small business owner in Rome who relies on stability to keep his cafe open. With declining trust in the euro, businesses like Francesco's face uncertainty. But don't just look at the big players. Instead, consider the ripple effect on everyday folks. The real kicker is the interest payments on this debt, which gobble up a huge chunk of Italy's budget. So where does this leave Italy? Constantly juggling debt and growth, stalled under massive obligations. Italy isn't alone, sure, but leading the charge in this precarious dance means when things falter, all eyes turn here first. When we talk about Italy, we often think of its rich history, the beautiful cities, great food, and vibrant culture. But behind this charming facade lies a financial behemoth that threatens to stagger the entire Eurozone. Italy's national debt is like an iceberg, massive and overwhelming, yet largely invisible to the casual observer. Why should we care? Because, folks, we're talking about a 147% of GDP here. That's astronomical for a nation with Italy's economic size. But here's the kicker. The current economic models assumed by the EU are so optimistic, they predict Italy will grow its way out of this debt. But how is that possible? Italy's GDP barely moves, like an old rusty train stuck on the tracks. The projected growth is laughably low. And then there's the political angle. As Antonio, a shopkeeper from Naples, told me, politicians promise solutions, but live far removed from everyday problems. So skepticism lingers. Then there's the European Central Bank. They've been buying Italy's debt to keep it afloat, creating this illusion of financial stability. But one has to ask, how long can a magic trick last? In the real world, numbers don't lie, and Italy's debt is guilty as charged. It's a precarious situation, and if Italy falls, the euro might just follow. And no amount of optimistic projections will stop that. That's the hard truth, but sometimes reality needs to be faced. All right, let's talk about Italy's debt, which is often referred to as a ticking time bomb. Why? Because if the situation doesn't change, the euro could face a very messy situation. Let's delve deeper. Italy's public debt has now ballooned to over 2.7 trillion euros. Yes, trillion with a T. Now, considering the country's GDP is around 1.7 trillion, that debt-to-GDP ratio is more than 160%. Compare that to Germany, where it's just over 60%. So naturally, everyone's asking, how can Italy sustain this? The official narrative would have you believe that it's all under control. But is it? The danger lies not just in the numbers, but in the reality of Italy's sluggish economic growth. For years, the country's economy has been underperforming. This means they have more money going out than what's coming in. And then there's Mario, like many Italians, who's skeptical about the future. He wonders how this affects his small business. Many Italians are asking the same thing. If interest rates rise, it could mean trouble. Italy may struggle to service its debt. And remember, if Italy goes down, it drags the entire euro with it. So really, how prepared are we for this ticking time bomb? Italy's national debt is an extraordinary sum, one that dwarfs most other economies in the Eurozone. Why does this matter? Well, when you have a country like Italy dragging around a debt mountain this huge, it forces everyone to question the stability of the euro. Think about it. If Italy defaults, what happens next? The ripple effect wouldn't just stop at the borders. No, it spreads across the entire Eurozone. And here lies the problem. The euro was designed to unite Europe economically, but not face such unprecedented challenges. Consider this example. Giovanni, an Italian shop owner, who relies on a stable economy to sell his products. If Italy's debt crisis escalates, his small shop could face severe challenges. And if enough Giovannis face trouble, the national economy takes a hit too. Moreover, Italy's debt troubles make lending expensive, even for other countries in the Eurozone. So basically, everyone feels the strain, not just Italy. And really, is the euro prepared for such a catastrophe? Something to think about next time we hear talks of financial stability in the Eurozone, don't you think? Italy's debt. It's not just a number you can glance over, but a looming giant that threatens the very stability of the Eurozone. Let's dig into why, in reality, this is less of an abstract problem and more of an existential threat. Now, Italy holds, get this, about 2.7 trillion euros in public debt. That's more zeros than most of us will ever see in our bank accounts. And here's the kicker. It's continually growing. But wait, didn't Italy promise to control it? Sure, there's the official narrative, but is it really believable? The reality is much more complicated. Enter Anna, an ordinary Italian citizen who's felt the pinch of increased taxes and stagnant wages. Because, let me be frank, the debt isn't just numbers on a screen. It translates into policy decisions that affect lives all across the country. But there's more. When banks start feeling the pressure, that burden ripples throughout the entire Eurozone. Imagine a domino effect where financial stability starts toppling over. It's a scenario nobody wants, but should definitely prepare for. Italy, my friends, holds one of the largest public debts in the world, and it's not just any debt. It's a whopping 2.7 trillion euros, which makes you wonder, how did they get here? This isn't just a recent issue, but a deep-rooted and chronic problem. You'll ask, where's the money going? Well, much of it is spent servicing previous debts, paying pensions and other social services. This sounds good, right? But here's where the plot thickens. Italy's economy isn't growing fast enough to keep up. Their GDP hasn't touched its 2008 level since then. Now, when you're in the Eurozone, you can't even print your own currency. So, they're stuck using what Germany wants. And this, my friends, is the real issue. You see, Germany's economy is thriving, so they want a strong euro. But a strong euro makes it harder for Italians to export. It's a vicious cycle, and it's ticking ever so slowly but surely. So, is Italy indeed the bomb that could end the euro? And so here we are. We've spent all this time digging into Italy's looming economic crisis, and from what we've seen, it sure looks like a ticking time bomb. Imagine this, the backbone of Europe's cultural heritage, a nation of art, history, and pasta teetering on the edge of economic collapse. And we're not alone in seeing this. Even the most optimistic economists are bracing themselves for potential disaster. Just look at the numbers. If Gina, a baker's daughter from Naples, can't get a loan to open her own cafe because banks are tightening their grip, where does that leave the rest of us? We hear assurances from politicians, but can we really trust them? Policies seem to shift like the sands beneath our feet, leaving us wondering what the future holds. Italy's debt, while just numbers on paper, could shake the very foundation of the Eurozone. Is Italy not a vital piece in this grand mosaic? So where do we go next? As we wrap up this exploration, the question remains unanswered. Can the euro survive this storm? Or will this be the unraveling of a European dream?